When anxiety gets switched on, it's really easy for us to feel completely out of control and unable to calm ourselves down. Today, I'm going to go through a quick run through of the nervous system just to give a little bit of background information, and then I'm going to walk through 2 different techniques that are super effective for calming down our body, calming down our mind, calming down our nervous system so that we can feel less anxious and more in control. Let's get to it. Okay, so in my last video, I mentioned that anxiety lives in the sympathetic nervous system, and that this is just one branch in the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system has control over bodily functions, things like breathing, heart rate, digestion, those sorts of things. Now, as with most systems in the body, they can be very complicated, very complex. There's a ton going on underneath the surface. There's a lot of details that are important along the way. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to break the autonomic nervous system down into 2 branches so it's a little bit easier to digest. I'm also going to mention a major set of nerves that plays a really big role in helping us calm down. So we're going to be talking about the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the vagal nerves, also known as the vagus nerve. When we are in the sympathetic state, we likely feel anxious, overwhelmed, stress, a ton of muscle tension. Just generally, we feel super uneasy when we're in a sympathetic state. When we're in a parasympathetic state, we feel calm, relaxed, and just generally safe. Now, these vagal nerves, they have connections all throughout the autonomic nervous system, and when they get stimulated, they have the power to slow down our heart rate. This is what we call a bottom-up approach to calming our anxiety. It's called a bottom-up approach because we're basically using the body through these different techniques to calm the mind and tell it and remind it that it is actually safe. We're basically doing the opposite of what we experience when we're in a sympathetic state. So for example, I'm going to walk through a couple of techniques today that really involves our breathing and deepening our breath, and doing some things in particular to help do one of these bottom-up approaches to calm the body and calm the mind. We can also use top-down approaches where we're actually practicing different cognitive techniques to calm our anxiety, but I'm going to go through and do a little bit of that next week. So for this video, we're just talking about a couple of bottom-up approaches. Both of the techniques that I'm going to walk through today are super effective for calming anxiety and moving us back into a parasympathetic, relaxed, calm state. Now, just one caveat to bottom-up approaches or just calming anxiety in general. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes for our nervous system to kind of switch gears, which means it's going to take 15 to 20 minutes of active coping for us to actually feel a decrease or a large noticeable decrease in the anxiety that we feel. So if you're going through some of these practices and by the end of, 5 breath cycles, let's say, you're kind of like, I'm still feeling jittery, I'm still feeling anxious, what's going on? Just know that is completely normal and actually to be expected, because it takes 15 to 20 minutes for our body to move from a sympathetic state where anxiety lives into a parasympathetic state, which is also called the rest and digest system. It's where we feel really calm and relaxed, and it just takes a little bit of time for us to move there. It's not necessarily just a flip of the switch and we feel calm, even though that would be nice. It's just not how our body works. Okay, so technique number 1 that we're going to walk through today is elongating our out breath. I don't really have a fancy name for it, unfortunately, so I'm just going to call it that. And it basically just describes what we're doing. We are going to try to make our exhale maybe twice as long as our inhale. So in order to do this, it's kind of helpful to count our breaths or count the seconds of our breaths. So let's say we're going to count our inhale to the count of 3. So we'll inhale 2, 3, and then we'll exhale. And our exhale, we're going to try to do it twice as long. So let's count to 6 on the exhale. So we'll inhale 2, 3, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when we exhale in this way, when we make it twice as long as our inhale, it's intentionally slowing down that process, doing the opposite of what anxiety wants us to do, which is quick, shallow breathing like we learned in the last video. It's doing the opposite. And when we do the opposite, it's sending those signals to the brain, to the body, saying, hey, it's okay, we can be calm, we're not actively in danger right now, and so we can start to alleviate some of that anxiety. Technique number 2 is called box breathing, and it also kind of just describes what we're going to be doing in this practice. Basically, we're going to be, with our counting, we're going to count kind of in a box form. So we're going to inhale to the count of 4, and then we're going to actually hold our breath to the count of 4. Exhale to the count of 4, and hold our breath again to the count of 4. So we're kind of breathing in a box, so to speak. We're gonna count the same, and it can be, to the count of 3, it can be to the count of 5. Really pay attention to what feels best for you today. So I usually just use 4 because it's kind of a nice little middle ground. So if you want to follow along in practice, on our next inhale, we'll inhale 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. And the reason that we hold our breath within this practice is because the act of holding our breath is doing the same thing as elongating our exhale is doing. It's doing the opposite of the anxiety of the sympathetic nervous system, and we're stimulating those vagal nerves. So in holding our breath, those vagal nerves gets stimulated, and then it starts to slow down our heart rate and send those signals to the brain that we're calm, we're safe, we're okay, and we can start to decrease the anxiety that we feel. Next week, we're going to be covering a few top-down approaches to dealing with our anxiety, which really all that means is we're going to be looking at our thoughts and the impact that they have on calming down our anxiety or making it feel way out of control. We're also going to be chatting about why we can't just talk back to our anxiety. So I hope to see you there, and we'll dive on in together.